So this week's SQL and FHIR Analytics meetup. Go ahead, John. We are talking about the scope for the release for this year.
Yeah, so I think we talked about, so first of all, the API, obviously, but scoping back the API a little bit to dodge some of those issues with incompatibility with the IG builder and logical models and multi-FHIR version issues and all that sort of thing. And perhaps we can do that with the first version of the API spec by just limiting it to system level operations. So maybe something like view export or view run at the system level or whatever we want to call it. And editorial tidying that up. And we have a few other sort of proposed changes. We have the repeat directive thing. We have the row index thing. The row index thing I haven't been able to do a PR for the yet, but the repeat one I have done a PR, and we're currently about halfway through, and I've implemented it in the reference implementation. We're about halfway through implementing it in Pathling. So I feel like that could be a kind of nice little minor release. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that plus the query library-based query resource.
Yeah. So, and do we have that in the IDE at all yet?
I don't think so. I haven't actually looked recently, but I mean that needs to be there. Like that's kind of the two. So for this release, which we're targeting v2.1, but 1 is a major release for us, right? Would be those 3 buckets: API, library-based query resource, and then smaller fixes and modifications.
We do have that actually. We've got a profile, query library profile, and we've got some code systems value sets as well. So we do already have that in there in some form. So we probably just need to review all that stuff as well.
Okay, I'm writing down my to-dos corner, Brian.
The other kind of possibly missing bit that I, from my perspective, relates to the post that I just made, I think, couple of days ago in the Analytic on FHIR channel about counting, because like I was just thinking the feature of an API that I think would be really useful, and it doesn't necessarily need to be directly in the operations that we've come up with, but I just feel like I want a way to do it, is to be able to so I've got these views that I want to export data with. So that's all that part kind of covered off. So I export these views and then I do SQL over them, etc. But the part that I don't know how to do just yet is to actually, a step before that, when I'm kind of identifying the cohort of patients that are actually the subject of this extraction, how do I actually determine how many there are within a particular server, given a set of criteria? So we've got these views that have like filter expressions and all of that in there, but I can't really count the subjects of those filters really currently. So I can't do things like I want to do a study, based on people who are like 18 to 65, with some sort of diagnosis. I can't actually say, well, how many of them are there, ahead of actually extracting the data for them and doing some sort of study on that data.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, it's the use case is to count but not receive, right? Right now, our answer is do the query, right? Receive rows, then potentially the join across multiple views, right? Views and or queries, and then count those, right? But what you're suggesting is a mechanism to just receive a count rather than the actual output.
Yeah, and
if I'm following, I may not be.
Yeah, and this is kind of like a feasibility step. So I'm
Mhm.
imagining like a
Mhm.
sort of research use case where you have places that you can get data from. They
Yep.
expose a standard API, and you're actually trying to work out the feasibility of your having your research question answered. And at this stage, you're really talking about, well, how many sort of patients, or how much sort of statistical power can I find to answer this particular question in this facility or this facility? I don't necessarily want to get actual data at this stage. I'm kind of still working out what I'm doing and whether it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also kind of borrowing this use case from sort of more established kind of, research data portals and stuff that already exist that are maybe not necessarily powered by FHIR, but like you can see the same sort of things with, things like OMOP or other sort of, national research data portals and that sort of thing.
Have you seen Julian Grudner's work in Germany, the German Federal Research Network thing?
Yeah, Medical Informatics Initiative. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yes, in fact, that's kind of like, you know what?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a long conversation with Julian at Dev Days, and I don't know if you look at the code that they've produced, but they are. I mean, Julian is particularly interested. We chatted a little bit. Hasn't come sort of on board into SQL and FHIR, but they construct like I think they translate research queries. I can't remember like the source language, but into I think FHIR search parameters, right? And then they do that sort of two-step process that you're describing, John, which is make those FHIR searches on their, it's at 40 research sites or something like that, like sort of in a distributed manner and say, like, do we have patients who meet such and such criteria through FHIR search? And then, that response comes back. And then I think the investigator says, okay, well, I'm going to do the real query now. I really want to get the data. Then there's a second process, and because there's a lot of data privacy issues, data management issues, and I think it goes to the central server, and then it's probably checked over and then handed to the researcher. So I described, I think Julian came to me. I can't remember how we got connected, but described the use case in this conversion to FHIR search queries, which they put a lot of work into, but they don't want to use, right? Like they don't want to. This is not necessarily the appropriate way. They have, I think, performance issues. So he was particularly interested in SQL on FHIR. All that to say, is this something that's feasible within the current, within our current thinking? Like what would an implementation look like in your mind, John?
Well, I think like one of the things that we've had in Pathlink for a long time is just a FHIR path search parameter. So there's literally just a underscore FHIR path search parameter, and you can just put a FHIR path expression in there. And that kind of solves the problem in a way, because one of the problems is the search API is not as expressive as FHIR path. So it's quite difficult to take like a set of view definitions and kind of extract from them a set of search filters that actually does the job, because there's going to be lots of edge cases there where you can't quite exactly do that and all the rest of it. But I can definitely see the value in like being able to translate between those two because of existing implementations of search API and all that sort of stuff. But if you did have just a FHIR path search parameter, it would make it super simple, because you could have inclusion and exclusion criteria just directly, just feed that to the search API and just use that to count things. You can't, I originally thought about like, well, is there just a mode or some sort of alternate operation for the SQL and FHIR operations to kind of count things, but that doesn't really work for a couple of reasons. One of them is because we only have single resource views and we actually potentially want to count things across resources. And the other thing, and the other reason is, what are we counting? I suppose you can count like the unique subject resources in the views. We're not counting rows, obviously, because we're potentially unnesting all sorts of things in views. So we're kind of,
Yep.
so if we go back to say that type 2 diabetes example, we don't want to count patients because those are all the patients. We don't want to count conditions. We want to count like unique patients once sort of joined to conditions, which is kind of like a multi-view type operation. It starts to get all very complicated. But what you could do if you had like something like a FHIR path search parameter is you could just say, take all the filters out of the patient, so age 18 to 65 or whatever, take all the filters out of the condition view, put that in as well, because in the search API, you can effectively do kind of joining. You can sort of say patient, I think you can do reverse chaining and that sort of stuff, which is effectively what you need there. Like go to the condition.subject and come and basically. So, but yeah, I was just kind of, I haven't fully thought it all through. I was trying to think about how we would do something like this. Because I think I've mentioned before that I did have a project in mind that I actually do have a student coming on board to have a look at now later in the year, to have this sort of universal sort of patient cohort selection and extraction tool based on SQL and FHIR API, and similar to like the SQL and FHIR playground or FHIR path playground, where you can kind of hook it up to a range of different servers in the back end. Maybe not quite so. Yeah, it could be different implementations, could be different sites, whatever. And you can basically do a set of queries to both kind of find your data and execute your views and extract data from a number of different sort of back-end servers in service of doing some sort of research task. So that's kind of something I think kind of brings together what we've been doing, but this is the part of it that I haven't really figured out how to do yet.
Yeah. Would it be valuable for Julian to come and join us and talk through some of this? Because I know he'd be interested. He'd be very interested. Like this is, pretty specifically his area of interest. And I'll definitely invite him. But if that's something that you're like a use case that you're particularly interested in driving forward, even with some resources too, that would be, I think, really, really good. And it's a kind of universal research, sort of federated research query use case. I mean, this is a similar use case for like multi-site studies across the board, right? So I think it's a very strong use case for us, putting aside, but
yeah, it's maybe not even just research either. It could also like bleed into sort of population health, government sort of, like mandatory government reporting sort of use case as well. We've certainly got some use cases here in Australia, which I think would fit with this as well. And, like I can imagine once you've got like all these bulk data interfaces all around the place, that you want to do useful things with them subject to, the consent of the participants, and to basically feed into improving the healthcare system and all that sort of stuff. And how do you do that? So I think, yeah, it would be a really good idea to have a chat with Julian about it. I actually have had some messages with him before, and I've worked with a guy who used to work with him who worked on this portal. In fact, I worked on the earlier iteration with them, and they were evaluating different solutions and all the rest of it. I used to have a account. I was going to show you the portal, but unfortunately, I don't think my dev account works anymore. And we've actually got a student from their area actually in our office at the moment. He's actually sitting there working on Pathlink right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that'd be a great idea, and that would help me sort of make this little project a bit more useful, I think, because we've got the opportunity to sort of come up with something and yeah, make sure that it hits the mark and that we've got everything that we need in the spec to actually enable it. I mean, obviously you can extract the data first and then do things like this, but I think there's some considerations there in terms of, at what point do you actually want to be passing data around? Is it before or after this point where you're getting the aggregate sort of counts of what you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's going to be, some differences in the use cases, but there's enough commonality, I would say, across it that this use case would resonate with, more than just specific application in a specific place, right? It touches upon important issues that might drive functionality. I'm not going to say it's for sure, but what I would love to see is, and this is exactly the thing I was talking about with Florian, was how can the foundational building blocks that we have today help support this use case in particular, right? Like let's just start there with what we have, and then see where I think what you're pointing out, John, is like kind of potential gaps, real world constraints that might drive potential changes to, say, the API, or what we're thinking of with query resource or something along those lines. But yeah, I think it's a great conversation, which I am actually very interested in following up with Julian with. And Steve, you might actually have, because you do, I think, work with a lot of research oriented folks as well. This might be really interesting to you. Did you see Julian's presentation at Dev Days, by the way, John? You might not have bought it. But
No.
let me see. My admin has disabled file sharing. That's lame. Who did that? Who did? I have a copy of it right here, and I was trying to.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, just I can figure out to do this. Are the Dev Days presentations all open now?
There's usually a delay until they're open.
It's usually like 6 months, so probably not quite. That's the Christmas present.
Yeah. No. I see here. I have a copy. I just want to send it to you guys. In which do I do this? Do you have any idea how to turn on file sharing? Docs, whiteboard notes, meeting info.
Or maybe just Zulip, maybe.
Yeah, I'll Zulip to you two guys, not just to the broad thing, in case the embargo is still happening. I want to say it. Let me just double check real quick. No, I don't see them yet posted on the agenda page. So I'll share it with you guys at least. And yeah, and then I'll reach out to Julian and say invite him for maybe 2 weeks from now. Next week is a lot of people are gonna be out. I won't. Well, will I be around? I might. So yeah, maybe next week. I wasn't thinking about it, but Tuesday at 3, I should probably be here. So well, let's see if it works for Julian, and then put him on the calendar. Okay. Hi, Adam.
How's it going?
Yeah, it'd probably be good. Like, I feel like it'd be good to kind of sort of plan out what we want to talk about at these meetings like ahead of time and kind of advertise and say this is what we're going to do on this day, and kind of say people who are interested in that particular topic have an opportunity to sort of come along on the day that we're talking about that and all the rest of it. So maybe if we're going to talk to Julian on that particular topic, we should like make a thread and say we're actually going to do this on this day once we've arranged it.
Okay, sure. I'll see when Julian is available, and then maybe let's start a thread on Zulip around this topic, and then I mean you already have started the thread, and then plan out the like in-person meeting. works. All right.
Yeah, so we were talking about like the spec and what we think is like in 2.1 or whatever. So yeah, I think that's kind of it, like maybe scope down and round out the API, a couple of new features to the view definition, and yeah, I think there's kind of maybe an unresolved thing around like around this that we have a chat about, yeah, sometime soon. And maybe that's a good target.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think anything else major is sticking out to me for inclusion in the release we want to do in December.
Yeah, I did kind of do a few sort of administrative types of things recently, like just fixing things that have been really bugging me, like that we were not getting actually the up-to-date spec to most people, that was like Googling SQL on FHIR and all that sort of stuff. And I hooked back up the build.fire.org process. So that is now running at the edge of the spec, and subbed that in for our build URL and got all that working. So now that should all work. And if you go to directory of published versions, it'll kind of take you back to our release page or go back to the CI build, depending on what you're looking, what you want to look at. And the other thing that we never actually did, and I notice it every time I run the IG builder and I see cannot find SQL on FHIR package or something. I don't know if every single user of the IG builder gets this error about SQL on FHIR, but it kind of seems like they might. And I realized we have never actually published the package to the FHIR package registry, which is like maybe a task that we should have done when we first published the spec. So I just opened a PR to do that and try and figure out the sort of arcane way of actually specifying packages and getting them published. Yeah, that was just a FYI. I've just been tidying up a few of those things.
Yes, thank you for following up on those, John. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. It's much nicer when you're searching for SQL on FHIR to go to the latest version and fix some of the brokenness there. Yeah, packages interesting. Since I think about packages quite a lot and did not realize that we did not have a package. So once that's approved, which I looked it over, it seemed correct to me. We'll see what Graham says, but and then that way it will be distributed into the FHIR package ecosystem out there. So thanks for both of those.
Yeah, the other thing we still need to do is get the SQL and FHIR test suite running within the IG builder itself, and actually make sure that the IG builder implementation actually passes it, and get it reporting tests up to our sort of test implementation page and all the rest of it. I have a feeling that it probably doesn't pass all those things. So I think there's a task there to do some work on the IG builder implementation of SQL on FHIR as well.
Yeah, that's.
What's that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, we haven't discussed that in quite some time. Yeah, we could. I mean, Graham is probably the only person who's capable of doing that. So unless there's another ID builder expert out there who also has the intersection with SQL and FHIR.
I mean, there's a couple option, like there's like a IG builder, but I also have on my list, I need to spend a little time getting up to date on FHIR shorthand. So
yeah, there's Graham sort of put together an implementation, which I'm not super familiar with. I haven't read over the code or anything inside the IG builder itself, that large piece of code that he manages. And so we are able to say, like, if you've ever used IG builder, you have access to SQL on FHIR. It's for the kind of like internal flattening of resources within IGs. So it's a really particular kind of use case. It's not like a normal. It's not like any of the other view runners. Basically, it's
actually probably wrong to say it's in the IG builder. It's actually in FHIR core, which is a Java library that is a dependency of the IG builder. It's also a dependency of Happy and that sort of thing.
That was it.
And I believe that so there's a few things that this thing does. It validates any SQL and FHIR view definition that you put into an IG, right? So that's quite important. It also can render like a nice page for any view definition that's in an IG. So like instead of just being a generic file, it will actually render out the structure of a view definition, etc. And the other thing that it does is that it can run view definitions over arbitrary set of resources, right? So, and this is just resource by resource in Java. So that's kind of useful. That's similar to like what the JavaScript implementation does, but in Java. But what it does in the IG builder is that he runs it over all the resources that are in the IG, and the IG has a feature in it, a SQL feature. So in any sort of IG page, you can actually do this, put an inline SQL query that will generate a table. And what you can do is any view definitions you happen to have in the IG will effectively kind of be registered as table names as far as the IG builder is concerned. So you can create these inline SQL queries on any page of the IG, and they will actually run over the tables that were created off the other resources in the IG. So for example, if you had like a whole bunch of code systems in the ID and you wanted to actually put out a table of them and their identifiers and how many codes there are in each and all that sort of stuff, you can actually do that. And that SQL and FHIR is actually running that under the hood. The only problem is that that was all done at a point in time, and I don't have a high level of confidence that that implementation is kind of conformant or up to date with the spec. And so what we need to do as a first instance is, I think, get a test harness happening inside FHIR core that runs the reference implementation tests and just see what the lay of the land is, get it reporting up to the SQL and FHIR website. And if there's any issues, I think have a go at fixing them. Luckily, I don't think it's terrible, the code. Like, I don't think it's just kind of in that giant IG builder blob. I think it is a relatively separate kind of like SQL and FHIR set of classes. So hopefully it's not terrible, but yeah, it is a piece of work that someone's going to have to do. And I can have a crack at it, but time's always and priorities are always a challenge. Yeah. But it's just something that's kind of on my mind as an outstanding task there that we should have a look at some point.
Yeah, it's good you bring it up. I haven't thought about it in ages. I think make a call on Zulip out. There might be people who are interested in this, in helping. I don't want to put it on you. So plus, I don't think there's a lot of urgency around it either. Obviously, I think the timeline is fairly relaxed, but yeah, I'd put a call out on it. Obviously, ask Graham what his motivations are at the moment, because if he's super excited about it and wants to like re-up it, he might not even know very much about what we've been up to the past 6 months or so. I would be surprised if he did, actually. So he might be interested and kind of have a new wave of interest in SQL and FHIR. I don't know about API necessarily, but he might be interested in some of the tweaks like you're doing with index and things like that to add to that, because that's, I think, would be particularly relevant to the use case that he cares about. So I'd make a call out to Graham and the broader community.
Cool.
Okay. So anything else in terms of the agenda? I am trying to get a little bit more organized for this weekend, but I've got a couple of days. Adam will be helping support too in Pittsburgh. So Adam and I should probably connect on just sketching out a little bit of an intro to SQL and FHIR, because I think it's going to be more of an intro conversation with a lot of people.
Nicola is not there, right?
No,
And then
he's not planning to attend.
John, I assume you're not there either.
Yeah, not this time, I'm afraid.
No worries. I mean, that's reasonable. I wouldn't want to I don't know if I'd want to travel to the US right now, actually, if I were from a different country.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I
Steve,
think-
will you be there?
No, I try to make it, but I can't for this weekend, unfortunately.
No worries.
Yeah, so it might be me and Adam holding down the fort. I think Dan will be there. I connected up
Oh,
with
nice.
Dan, yeah, a couple of days ago. Pretty sure Dan will be there. So we'll see what we get, who we get. I don't think we are going to make tons of progress and drive things forward necessarily, but we can at least give an introduction to people and raise some awareness. Yeah, there's a lot going on for a lot of people, but yeah, there are a lot of interesting topics to connect with on this time around. So we're not making a big splash. We are putting some focus on the conference in December. So that is starting to come together. We're getting the speaker list together. I was just working on that. I think we are getting close to a number like, I would say probably around 10 speakers. There may be more.
That's
So
quite a lot.
yeah, but it'll be split over 2 days, John. They're
Yeah,
not doing 10
that's
in a
good.
row. Like there's no, yeah. Unlike, I think like 3 hours in the morning, at least Eastern time, over 2 days and shorter sessions. It should be a lot like we are tuning it so it's a little bit more presenter friendly and I think audience friendly. That's at least my approach. So yeah, if we had like 10, 12 speakers over 2 days, short sessions, I think that's a reasonable number. I don't want to go above that. Let's put it that way. So we are
Okay.
getting there.
Sounds good. What was that? I've had lots of thoughts. One other thing that I thought I would mention is I'm working on a connectathon specifically for a health jurisdiction here in Australia, and we're doing an analytic track. They've specifically asked for an analytic track, so I'm coming up with like material, sort of educational material, basically to support that. So what I'm actually putting together is like on Databricks free, having some sort of sample data sets and pathling and notebooks, and like here's how you take FHIR data and run and come up with SQL and FHIR views to run over and execute those views, and then do queries over the top of that in service of answering questions and all the rest of it. And I feel like once I've like done that, that could become sort of a bit of a reusable resource for anybody who wants to kind of, you know, have that type of thing, you know, where we've got people who want to learn about this stuff, and it's kind of worked examples and exercises to kind of assist with that. So I thought I would kind of mention that as well.
I think
Yeah, that
that's
sounds
great.
terrific.
I would be happy to, if you want to pull me in and get 2 cents, because if I teach my introduction to Smart on FHIR again, I'll probably do a lecture on FHIR analytics, and then it was something like that where I'd make them, here's a bunch of flat FHIR, convert it to SQL on FHIR, and yeah, I think certainly for students it's really valuable. I had somebody at just a general run club approach me last night about jobs, and I was like, do you know Link? Do you know SNOMED? Like. So it's good to think about these things, because the ease of use really, I mean, I think we all would all agree here, like this is like a very common sense use case, but like, we're not bursting at the seams with numbers right now, and we should be. So I think the easier we can make it to learn and to use, and also show, really pertinent use cases is important. So, well, it looks like Arjun had to drop. So
yeah, I think unless anybody else has got anything that they want to talk about, I think we'll probably leave it there anyway.
No, that works.
The only
Oh, sorry,
other
go ahead.
thing you guys probably didn't notice, as we were chatting, there's another SQL on FHIR implementation that just announced on Zulip from somebody from SAS. It's a Python implementation.
Ooh,
That's really cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out today.
Who was it? You said SAS?
The company is, yeah, the analytics company SAS.
Like the makers of the R language?
Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't recognize the person, but
I mean, that's the only SAS I know in terms of a company, is like because when I took stats in college, like we had to use SAS.
yeah,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
that's
Or
SAS.
sorry, I don't know why I said R. I'm conflating R, the open source version, with the paid, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Cool.
Guys,
All
I
right.
gotta jump too. All right.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Good to see you all.
Good,
All right,
good
see you,
Adam
Steve.
at the conference.
Yeah, I just need a good attendance on patient scheduling. So if you know anybody that might be interested, send them my way for the Connect-a-thon. So
Will do.
cheers.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
See
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.